Davy Crockett Saves the World by Rosalind Shanchazer. Author's note. The real Davy Crockett in 1786 and 1836 was a famous frontiersman, hunter, scout, and quick-witted storyteller from Tennessee who became a member of Congress and died defending the Alamo. He captured the public imagination that between 1835 and 1855, a series of comic comics written by Crockett himself became a bestseller, sandwiched between information about stars, tides, and the weather were outrageous drawings of tall tales about Davy Crockett that did give the hoot about the facts. The story in this book was written in the spirit of the Almanacs, and sometimes even stirs together a concoction of events and phrases found therein. I reckon by now I've heard of Davy Crockett, the greatest woodsman who ever lived. Why? Davy could whip 10 times his weight in a wild cast and drink the Mississippi's river dry. He combed his hair with a rake, shaved his beard with an axe, and could run as fast that whenever he went out, the trees had to step aside to keep from getting knocked down. Folks away crowd about the deeds of Davy Crockett, but the biggest thing he ever did was to save the world. This here story tells exactly how he did it. Every single word is true, unless it is false. About the time when Aloud began, the world's heap was trouble. Away past the clouds and far beyond the stars, a planet outer space, scientists with telescopes discovered the biggest and baddest ball of fire, ice, and brimstone ever to light up the heavens. Its name was Halley Comet, and it was hurling itself lickety split straight toward America. Why, its tall tail alone was 2 million long. If you went to hit the earth, everyone was blown out of smithereens. The President of the United States started getting big piles of letters telling them to stop his comet before it was too late. He made a law telling the comet would crash into Earth, but the comet paid no attention. It just kept speeding toward America and growing bigger every day. Finally, the president had an idea. He had heard of the brave named Davy Crockett, who lived somewhere in the mountains far away. He put an advertisement in all the newspapers and America said, "Wanted by the President of the United States, Davy Crockett pulled the tail off of Halley's Comet." Meanwhile, Davy Crockett didn't know a thing about any comet. He had no idea what the Earth was even in danger. Davy was off in the forest with his huge pet bear, Death Hug. He was teaching him to dance so he could press this real pretty gal named Sally Sugartree, who would dance a hole through a double oak floor. He was reading any newspapers. It took whole 2 weeks, but once Davy learned all the latest dances, he combined his hair nice and slow in his rake, shoved his face to a careful like with a 6-axe, and sauntered off toward Sally Surgate's cabin just as easy to please. All this time, of course, Halley's Comet was getting closer and closer to the Earth and moving faster by the minute. Now, Sugartree was not just pretty, but she was right smart too. Sally read the newspaper front and back every day, and she knew all about Halley's Comet. She had also been in the advertisement from the president. Sally climbed up a 50-foot hickory tree and commenced to look for Davy Crockett. Before long, she spotted him in a faraway closet forest. Sally grabbed the newspaper and waved it around as hard as she could, and when he saw her, he grinned and started to walk a bit faster. As soon as Davy got close enough, Sally jumped right out of the tree. Davy caught her arms and gave her such a huge hug that her tongue stuck out half a foot and her eyes popped out like a lobster's. Then she shoveled Davy's front at the president. Davy didn't know what Halley's Comet was, but if the president of the United States wanted to say, he would waste no time getting to Washington. He boarded up a death hug and set up like a high-powered hurricane, and he could dance later. Death Hug ran so fast that the rocks and trees, cows and snakes and other vermins all flew out behind him. By the time they reached the White House, Halley's Comet was getting so close that he didn't have a minute to lose. The president told Davy to climb the highest mountain he could find right away, and to wring the comet's tail off before he could destroy the earth. Then the president posed to Davy for pictures to pretend to look calm. Davy combed his hair with his rake, pulled up his sleeves, and ate a big plateful of pickled rattlesnake brains fried by lightning that gave him energy. Then he commenced to climb all the way up to the top of the Eagle Eye Peak in Great Smoky Mountains. Eagle Eye Peak was so high that you could see every state and river mountains in the whole geography book. He could also look far off in outer space. By the time Davy reached the top, it was night. Halley's Comet spotted Davy's crowd right away. It was flying leap, zoomed past all the stars and planets. Then it laughed and headed straight toward Davy like red-hot cannonball. Lightning and thunder shot off its eyes. So many sparks flew out of its tail that even with it was night, the entire countryside lit up the roasters set the crown. That comet must have thought Davy looked mighty tender, for it licked its chops, howled louder than 100 tornadoes, and roared toward him with its mouth wide open. This made Davy so mad that he jumped right over its shoulders and onto its back. Then he planted his teeth around the comet's neck and hung on. Halley's Comet spun around and around like a whirlwind trying to throw Davy off, but it couldn't. Next off, the comet tried to drown Davy by diving into the Atlantic Ocean. The water got so all fired hot that it boiled. The whole world was covered with steam, and the sun didn't shine as bright as unusual for a month. Just in time, the ocean put out the comet's fire and melted all its ice. It washed up on an island, and before it could grow back to its original size, Davy grabbed what was left to Halley's tail, spun around several times. He hurled the comet back to outer space. It was so discomfortable that the next time it ever came in this direction, it missed the Earth by 39 million miles. That's how Davy saved the world. In fact, he did such a good at that there was a huge parade in his honor. He also got to marry Sarah Sally Sugar Tree, and it was even elected to Congress. Of course, the infernal fireball singed the hair right off Davy's head. A whole new crop grew back in his tufts, and the grass kept in such a snarl that he couldn't even comb it without breaking its rake. That's why these days Cocomelon also wears a coonskin cap.